Hello, everybody. Welcome to Customer Experience R&R with my good self, Richard Knight.
And my even better self, Rian Huxtabler. That's my summer name.
You speak funny down your neck of the woods.
Yeah. And myself, Ryan Huxtable. If for those of you,
I've just got to say, happy 50th, Mr. Huxtable. Not for your many years, but for the 50th episode of our illustrious podcast, which has been running for 50 episodes.
50 episodes. We started this 18 months ago.
It seems like far longer. It seems like far longer. And I'm sure our audience they'll be loving the fact that we're on 50. We're 50 not out. That's not a bad effort.
Out. Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty good.
Cool.
Pretty good.
It's cool.
Nice.
So what are we warbling about today then?
The warbling process. Process sounds really exciting. Some people will be going, "Oh, excellent," and other people will be going, "Oh, really? Yeah, no." So we're just going to do a little bit of a review. Back a few weeks ago, you may remember or not, we had our summer seminar, and we had Scott Ashman from Longleat who joined us for that session. He joined us live and was commenting on a couple of interviews from other business owners, but also he was talking himself about Longleat and what they'd been doing during the this most interesting of times to keep that customer experience going, and process was mentioned quite a bit. So shall we hear from Scott?
Yeah,
that is process. Great.
It's quite interesting actually, because I think when the customer is the forefront of your business, I think there's quite a lot of similarities regardless in the size of your business, whether it's a farm shop, which is their primary customer is strawberry picking, or a safari park with up to 1,500 staff in their peak summer. It's quite interesting listening to Laura, and I made note actually of two main quotes that she mentioned, was that strip it back to basics and is out of our hands. And I think the strip it back to basics is something that we've actually done at Longleat this year, because with the first lockdown last year and us obviously slowly being able to reopen the business in some formality, we've had to keep some of the areas of the park closed, unfortunately, and some of the main areas of the park, and operate in some of like the train and the jungle cruise at 50% capacity has led to increased queue lines, etc. And we had to have a think of what have we got on the park that guests don't really take as much advantage of, that that we thought of and that we want them to do. So our amazing grounds and gardens that we have on the Longleat estate, generally guests will only walk around there or have a picnic when the weather's beautiful, with no real purpose or knowing what it is that they're seeing and walking around. So this year we have launched our Tales of the Garden event, where we've had some incredible artists from the local areas install some quite unique exhibitions which show off our histories of the grounds and gardens, with a lot of informational boarding and interp placed around. And we've actually seen a lot of guests flock over to this area because they're actually interested of, well, we've come to see the animals, but what is Longleat, who are the family, and what is the estate part of? And for me, it's one of probably the better events that I've actually seen that we do here, aside obviously from the balloon sky safari and things like that, for us to actually use what we've got on site to encourage guests to move away from the hustle and bustle of the queues and in our busier areas, to experience what the wider park actually has to offer. And what Laura also mentioned about out of our hands, I think I've worked in leisure since I was 16. I've worked in theme parks, water parks, and now a safari park. And I think we all work in leisure for a reason, that no day is the same. And when she's mentioned out of our hands, we can be as proactive as we could possibly be with procedures and policies and training, but on a daily basis we're having to react to staff needs, customer needs, incidents, and accidents that should happen on a daily basis. And I think the pandemic, we could put, unfortunately, into one of those categories that we've had to react to so many times. And when we've come to reopening the park, we think we've got X deadline to meet, but it's actually pushed forward by 2 weeks. So we're having to react again then and get everything put in place. Or, you know, we were gearing up to, with the latest restrictions hopefully being eased, but you know, obviously that changed a little bit. So, you know, it refocuses us, and as much as we were being proactive in that case, we've had to react again and slightly adapt again. You know, adapt being the key word of 2020, 2021, I think. And, you know, I think it shows what people are capable of, you know, from small businesses to big businesses. And, you know, it's been a real eye-opener, should we say.
And in terms of sort of adapting and changing what you're doing, what sort of impact has that had on the teams, on the staff? Because Laura mentioned, you know, teams there, and I know Robin sort of mentions staff shortly when we hear from Robin as well. How has that impacted you? Have you had problems, or has it been a good, you know, a good view of things from the team generally?
I think it's quite a unique situation again, because this pandemic isn't just affecting businesses, it's affecting people's personal lives at the same time. So instead of having to manage the team just on a work day-by-day situation, is actually, you know, staff members' mental health. You know, they've got a lot more going on at home, worrying about their friends, their family, when they're going to see those people next. And, you know, unfortunately, and, you know, it's the same for everyone. It's the same for all of us, I'm sure, as well. I've been in the same situation. So, you know, I was furloughed for the whole of summer last year. It's quite a unique thing for me, I guess, to our busiest time of the year to not be working. So my wife was working from home. She had great difficulties with me being at home, I'm sure. But as soon as I came back, you know, it was quite key for me to get in contact with the staff straight away, just to give them any update that I was having. Even if it was on a daily basis, you know, more information, the better for these guys. And when they returned to site, we made sure that we had quite large team briefings as to, this is how the business is going to operate now, this is the plan moving forward. And, you know, we operate quite an open forum in Longley anyway. You know, you'll see all the executive team, the directors, myself as the managers, we're always at the front line with the staff, you know, on a daily basis. And I think by having that working relationship prior to this pandemic, it meant it's a little bit easier to handle moving forward as well, because they were quite open and honest with you. And, you know, they're the ones that deal with the guests on a frontline basis, and any feedback that we receive from the team, you know, likewise with the guests, you know, we would always consider and, you know, implement. And, you know, I think from a business point of view, a tip would be, regardless of your size, don't be afraid to change on a daily basis if you have to, whether that's for the guests' experience or for the staff, because at the end of the day, you know, they marry, and without great team, you won't get the guests coming back, and without the guests enjoying yourself, you won't be able to employ a team as such. So yeah, it's, you know, a circle of you know, customer experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And myself and Ryan have warbled a lot about that, and I think Ryan's actually going to make a point now, and I shall hand over to him.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question. It's really interesting listening to you, Scott, talking about what you picked up from Laura, and this, you know, this point that she was making around back to basics and adapting quickly. And and the reflection I had there was, you know, in an environment, in a farm shop environment where you've got a restaurant and cafes, you know, perhaps you can do that with maybe 50 staff on site. Longley, iconic location, world famous, world renowned. People's expectations of the visit to Longley will probably be, you know, very, very high. It struck me when you said, you know, we've had to do that on a daily basis. We've had to change things for guests, for team members as well. How practically, how easy is that? Because if you guys can, you know, if we look at Longley as a bit of a super tanker that you've got to try and turn, you know, quite quickly to avoid, you know, whatever issue you're facing, you know, how quickly have you been able to adapt on a daily basis, and what kind of have you got any examples of how you've done that?
Yeah, I think, I don't like to use the word buy-in, but I think if you have the trust and reliability of your team on board, adaptability could happen overnight. You know, you explain what you're going to do in the evening, for example, or, you know, we have morning briefs every single morning that the park opens. And if we need to make any changes to the operational times, or, you know, the structure of the day, or, you know, just any like little information like that, we can do that at 9 o'clock in the morning. And we know that that information is going to be cascaded out by 9:15 the same morning, and that will be changed and adapted. And I think that comes from the working relationship. There's examples as long as my arm, I think, about how much we've had to change over the season. And I think one of the biggest things that we've had to do, we've noticed, even though we've been running at a very reduced capacity, I'd say we've probably been running at about 40-50% for the most of last year and going into this year, which is a massive impact on us as a business. But because we're having to run most of our attractions, so the Jungle Cruise, the railway and things like that, at half capacity, and with social distancing in place, it's elongated our queue lines to make it look like we're at 100% capacity and we're spilling over. So we've actually tried to structure the day for the guests. We try to take that stress out of their hands. So if you were to book a ticket to visit Longleat, you would select the date that you want to visit, and then you'd actually book a safari drive-through time slot. So say, for example, we operate those time slots 10 till 12, 12 till 2, and 2 till 4, with 4 o'clock being the last entry into the safari park. And all our staff, whether that's on social media or emails, they know the tips and tricks of the park. So if they're questioned, we would generally say, if you're booked in to do the safari park in that 2 till 4 time slot, come to the park at 9:45 in the morning, where you'll be let down and parked up to enjoy all of the footfall areas of the park, like we like to call it. So Animal Adventure, the Jungle Cruise, Koala Creek, the railway, Family Farmyard, and all of the children attractions, the Adventure Castle. And then by the time you generally done that, it's lunchtime. So you may spend about an hour enjoying your lunch, deciding where to eat first from all of our on-site restaurants, and then having that free roam then to go to the safari park from any time, say 2 o'clock onwards. And then generally that would take them about an hour and a half to 2 hours, because it is free roaming in there. Like I mentioned before the call, we don't shut the gates on any cars in there. I'm sure people would pay for that experience, but it's not one that we do openly offer. And then after the safari park, they would generally leave to go home, or pop down, grab a coffee before their trips home as well. So, we've tried to, because we saw at peaks at the main park when it was lunchtime, it's getting quite overcrowded, and indirectly obviously had a massive impact on our customer experience, because the queues seem bigger, and it's taken slightly longer because we've gone completely cashless as well on site. So yeah, it was just trying to, like you said, expectations of Longleat are very high at the best of times. And I think because people are wanting to spend their money within the UK at the moment, and people may have unfortunately lost their jobs or still be on furlough, that money means more now than ever before. So, we're not having to, but we feel that we want to be delivering more for the money that the guests are paying when they are entering the park.
Brilliant. Well, there's Scott doing his warbling process. Over to you, Mr. Huxtable. Yeah. Process.
Well, I was blessed because last week I had a little bit of time off, and I went there to Longleat. I went over to Kenny, came across the border, nice. And and so Scott talks a lot, doesn't he, about helping people feel safe, the change in the process, for example, of when you visited the safari park, so there wasn't hundreds of people there, and making sure the queues are being managed. It was really interesting to see, because a lot of what Scott said in that particular episode we interviewed him on a few weeks ago was really came through when I went to visit the park. So what was really interesting, we went on a really busy day, and I thought this will be interesting because it will really test whether those new processes and procedures are in place. And I have to inform that it was a good experience. There was a lot of people there. It was really hard for the team. You could see that they were under a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. Last week they would have still been under the pingdemic. A lot of people, I'm sure, would have been available. But booking the tickets, the process, the client journey through that was really simple. Understanding when you were going. I got informed when I got to the entrance when my safari spot was. Mm-hmm. and you know, it did work really well. So having that process in place, I was informed, you know, that I could then go back to the main house and see the attractions on the main house, which was good. And actually, it was quite slick. It took quite a time to get through the safari park, probably longer than I'd envisaged, but that was just down to the sheer numbers of visitors. But you know, you came out having done the walk-in safari, having had some lunch in the walk-in safari, and then gone into the safari park itself. We popped out right by the house, so we're parked really quickly, really easily, ushered into the other attractions in and around the house. So, you know, just making sure that that process and people understood that process really helped our day. So it definitely does work.
So from my point of view, the process piece is really interesting. Obviously, from an attraction point of view, it's a different sort of kettle of fish, if you like, in terms of number of little journeys that the customers are going on. You know, whether you go into the drive-through, if you're not going to the drive-through, do you go straight somewhere else? You've got a number of different touch points, and that's the same in any business. One of the key things, I think, is that with all of this change that's been going on, there's been change in organizations. And I know we've spoken about this before, but process change is, whether it's the smallest little adjustment to what you're doing or a wholesale change in a complete customer journey, the key thing from any CX, or, you know, from the focus point of view on CX, is, have you tested it? Do you know how it's landing? Simple example, websites. Okay, so if you change data information on your website and the button to find more information, have you tested it? Do you know that when they click on that button, your clients, your customers are going to go to the place you think they're going to? We've mentioned this a number of times. People with websites who have had inquiry forms, the process has changed. They've changed the mailbox where the inquiry forms are left, or they haven't changed that and it's stayed exactly the same. And 2 years worth of inquiry forms have sat in a, you know, in a mailbox, not being seen, not being followed up, and therefore the impact on the customer journey as a whole, customer experience, is massive. So from our point of view, the key thing, if you're listening and watching today, is, have you tested, retested, and tested again the flow, the touch points, the process that your customers are going to? Because even though you've got it sorted internally and everybody knows what to do internally, that's only a very small amount of the considerations to make, because all of those small things can explode into much bigger issues on the customer and client side. So how are you going about doing that? Are you getting people to test your website? If there's a new product on, can people get to it? Can people buy it? If there's a new phone system, is it sending people through to the right place? Is there still 900 options when you pick up a telephone to a business?
I think
so. Loads of processes.
Your point, though, Rich, you know, the broader point here is the 18 months we've just been through. Businesses have had to pivot their processes. They've had to educate their people differently. They've had to. Some have taken their customers with them, some haven't. But as we emerge from the restrictions, as we are now throughout August and into September, and things are getting to some kind of new normality, what I'm noticing is some great businesses are continuing to pivot, change, react, sitting there saying, is my business ready for action today? You know, they're looking at all of those touch points. And others aren't. Others are, you know, I see this real malaise, and businesses and people are tired. You know, they want to break. And it's the little things, like you say, you know, the fact, you know, do you even know what your website says about your brand anymore? Do you even know, has it still got a COVID-19 statement up there that hasn't been reviewed? It's amazing how many of those I still see when I go onto people's websites that are, you know, that are now technically out of date. So it's just making sure that you are casting your eyes over every element, every touch point, as you said, as you know, as Scott was talking about, the Longleat experience too. So
yeah, absolutely. So and before we finish here, the key things then are you still asking your customers how they feel about their interaction with you? Key thing to do, it doesn't matter how you're doing it. Are you connecting with them? Are you asking them? Silence is not good. Silence can be quite scary because they might have gone somewhere else. So let's make sure we keep asking. The other thing to do, and again, something that Insight 6 can help out with, is actually looking at the journey, putting it together into a full journey map, and actually testing it via mystery visits. Some of our, what we would call customer experience researchers, going in there and actually testing the process you think should be happening, because you will see certain things that you may think, well, blimey, didn't know that was happening. And if you can adjust it and react to it quickly, you're in a better chance of keeping those customers longer, and they're keeping them happier, and then they'll refer more. So if you would like to learn more about that from us, please do message us or go onto our website, and you can see what we can offer from that point of view. But the key thing is just keep asking them. Keep asking them. Is it still the same? Are we still providing you with that great service, or has something changed? Has something changed?
Great points as always. Great points as always.
I think to the point, succinct one today, but thanks for Scott Ashman for joining us again on our Summer CX, and we heard from him again, so that was great. And we will be back in a couple of weeks' time with another episode.
Yeah,
and
look forward to it for our 51st.
51st. Well, going into the second half. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. So I've been Rich Knight.
I've been Ryan Huxtable. Goodbye.